All right, it's 6:01, and we'll get this city council study session started, October 28th, 2019. We have everyone here, including Mayor Pro Tem Russell, but she's on the phone with us tonight. So she's calling in, and we'll leave time for her every so often to make sure she can jump in when she wants to. But I've also told her to feel free to just kind of shout out that, hey, I have something to say. And a few of you are using your green and red blocks tonight because apparently the lights aren't working, so hopefully I'll look and see those, but if I don't, just wave at me. So tonight our first item up is our flood-prone area stormwater study, next steps, and our Public Works Director, Maria DeAndrea, is here to present and discuss this with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So we'll go through the slide presentation. Feel free to stop me with any questions. I do have some background slides, so I'll run through those pretty quickly so that we can get to the meat of the discussion. So just again, we're focusing on 4 different areas related to stormwater, specifically systems maintenance and repair. So we're doing projects right now to repair the sinkhole, doing things like cleaning out the line along Oxford, that sort of thing. Program funding we're focused on, long-range planning with our master plan, as well as looking at rates and fees, which is just about to start that project, our stormwater rate study. And then finally, which we'll focus on tonight, is capital project implementation. So that again will be the focus for tonight's discussion. Working through, we've done quite a bit of work already. So we're really in the middle of the process. I wanted to show this sort of as a funnel so that construction is our ultimate goal with the capital projects. And we're working our way through that funnel and hopefully refining and getting to a better answer as we go along. So we've talked about that, some of the areas that we're focused on. Specifically tonight, we'll be discussing the feasibility of that alternative alignment along Radcliffe and the results of that. And then our intent for after tonight's discussion is to get direction from City Council on the projects that perhaps you wish to move forward with, which will refine our discussion related to the stormwater rate study and our potential bonding, as well as then give us direction to move forward to issuing requests for proposals for design consultants. Sorry, I should have been talking about that here. So again, our goal is to move towards project selection, which is right, oops, not that. Oh my, sorry, Sam. I really screwed it up.
Yeah, it's repairable.
Okay. So our intent is to move towards project selection after tonight's discussion. This map shows our existing storm sewer capacity. So you can see that there's several areas where the storm sewer capacity of the current pipes do not even exceed the 5-year. So we know we have issues not only in the areas that we'll discuss tonight, but also in the northern portions of town, the central portions of town, and further east. Again, we've been focusing down, looking at the 5, 10, 25, and 100-year storm event, and we've really been focused on looking at either that 10-year or 25-year storm event to protect to that level, either with detention or without. And we've been focusing in our discussions recently around that 25-year storm sewer design without detention. So that's kind of been the focus, and what all the numbers that are in the council memo and on the slides tonight relate to the 25-year storm event. So again, this is just an overview of all of the proposed projects. This was shown at the flood study meeting a week ago Thursday. Gives some tentative dates on there, but does have the disclaimer about, ultimately that funding is needed in order to move forward on those schedules. And then this is the project prioritization, which shows S1, S2, and then S3 is the first 3 of those project lists out of a total of 13 there. So again, that doesn't mean that those other projects are not necessary or important, just that they prioritize those based on the number of people served and benefited by that, as well as kind of working from the downstream up. So again, that bathtub analogy. If you fix the bathtub drain, everything upstream gets better. So, jump into more of the meat of tonight's discussion. So, we had come back in early August to talk to council about the possibility of evaluating an alternative alignment. Oxford Avenue is just off the top of the screen right up here, and that's where our existing S1 alignment is. It runs all the way from S2, kind of runs in this area. It connects up in Oxford, right about at this junction with Navajo. And then S1 project goes underneath the railroad tracks and Santa Fe Drive all the way to the river here. So based on our experience with these sinkhole repairs over the last several years, and just the size, mere size of what Caliber has proposed in terms of how large those box culverts would be, and the number of utilities that we've already encountered, we wanted to look at the possibility of taking some of the water, instead of basically coming out of Rotolo Park, coming like this up through S2 and going along there, is to divert some of that water along Radcliffe to outlet here at the South Platte River. So they also looked then, the green alignment kind of shows where the existing storm sewer flows from Rotolo, that would be part of S2, and then this would be a new alignment where there's an existing Denver water line. So we looked at all of that as part of this alternative feasibility. So what we discovered was that there are several significant utilities along that proposed alignment. That doesn't mean that we can't work around them, but they would involve significant additional costs. Primarily, there's one right down here, very close to the river. It runs north and south, and it's a sanitary sewer line that feeds up into the wastewater treatment plant. There's also several other utilities that cross here, which cause conflicts and basically ultimately limit the size of the pipe that can be put in there. There's also a Denver water line that runs parallel through most of the length of this section west of Santa Fe Drive. And so we're limited by state statutes, or it's probably not even state, it's really federal requirements or water requirements that you have to have at least a 10-foot separation between water mains and any other kind of utility. And so we're very limited in the right-of-way then of how large of a pipe we can actually put in here, because that Denver water line is already in place. So that we have conflicts laterally or adjacent, as well as across the potential line. They also looked at, so basically they could get a storm sewer pipe in there, but the maximum size would be about 60 inches, so about 5 feet tall. And we think we could maneuver our way through all of those different utilities. However, the problem is that does not provide a significant amount of relief to still having, and we would still have to do the Oxford line, not only replace it, but upsize it still. So, and really, so we compared the two costs by saying, okay, if we still have to do S1 and S2, at least do S1 to some level, probably still enlarge it, would that cost more with this new line than just doing S1 and S2 as we had originally planned? And so they looked at those costs, and in looking at those costs, kind of a good thing happened. They were able to reevaluate their analysis for S2, and the overall costs, they were had done some assumptions in there about the pipe conditions, and the project S2, we were able actually to go down from 2 box culverts down to 1. So I would also like to recognize Carl, because he brought that up as well, to say those pipes seem really big. So we took a look at that, and we're actually able to reduce that. So we're going to look at, when we compare this alternative alignment, we're going to compare it with these new numbers. So S1 and S2, these are the new numbers, if you will, our revised costs based on that analysis and those corrections by Caliber. So we're looking at a total of $30 million. If we were to do that pipe along Radcliffe, And again, that's the red line shown here in the map. That would be about $6.5 million. So and that's shown here. But we still, again, have to do pretty much everything for Project S2, as well as still upgrade and replace everything in S1. So you can see we're spending about roughly $2 million more on this option versus this option. So therefore, at this time, staff is recommending that we not proceed with that alternative and instead stay with the original alignment of S1 and S2 as originally discussed. And I'll show that here in this map. So it's a kind of a blown up schematic, but we would start with S2 at the outlet here of Rotolo Park and replace all that line. This is exactly where the pipes are currently in this kind of purple color. And so we would simply tear up the road and replace the existing pipes with larger pipes in that instance. Similarly here on S1, of course, we still have to get underneath the railroad and CDOT, but we would upgrade those pipes all the way to the river from this intersection here at Navajo. Any questions on that before I move forward?
Councilmember Martinez?
Thank you. Just a question. The timing is still the same. S1 needs to happen first before S2, no matter what.
I think we can do that concurrently.
Okay.
I don't think that we can, we just have to make sure that, I guess, oh, excuse me, let me just point here. So, you know, we could probably build everything. The question is, I think this is the bottleneck. So we wouldn't want to obviously build all of this and just have it flow and create more volume here. So we'd really have to have a plan and a schedule to work to make sure that this piece is done either concurrently at the very latest with S2.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Questa, I'm not sure your thing is red, but you, yeah.
Is it
just
green? It's
green
been a
when
while
you
since
want
I've
to
done this.
speak.
Thank you.
That's right, but I got it.
Thank you. Director, the original alignment versus the alternate alignment, Councilmember Martinez had a question in terms of sequence just now, and thank you for the information on that. What is the time frame for completion on both projects? Is there any major difference between the two? I see the cost difference, but could one be completed faster than another?
That's a good question. I think, again, let me jump back to the map here. So with the alternate alignment, we still have the issue here. So we still have to get what's called a license agreement from the railroad, and we still have to work an agreement with CDOT to put a new pipe in underneath the ground. And the way we wouldn't be able to open cut that, I mean, we couldn't open up Santa Fe Drive. So instead what you have to do is jack it or bore it and basically push sections underneath the roadway. The lesser, CDOT is probably lesser of an issue than the railroad. So I've heard from other agencies who are trying to get a trail in or different things. Burlington Northern is just, and Union Pacific have just been very backlogged with a lot of requests. And it could take up to 1.5 to 2 years to get that process through. So I don't foresee the design taking a lot of time. It's more just that, and we would really need to reach out to Burlington Northern to understand that time frame. They do have a right-of-way group who is a private company who works with them. They're called JLL. But again, it's really at their whim. We have nothing to bring to the table that really helps them. And so it's at their discretion as how quickly they move. So I'm sorry for the long answer, but it really is contingent on that piece.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez?
Thank you. I was going to say that makes a lot of sense, you know, but it's a really important part of this puzzle that we don't have control over. So what is the soonest? I mean, I'm just trying to understand in terms of like sequence of communication. What's the earliest we could reach out to them and say, hey, we want to do this? Could we do it now without having a formalized project and date request? Is that something we could do now, or we need to wait?
Absolutely. I think we could certainly reach out to our contacts at JLL and the regional staff person for BNSF and at least put it on their radar screen and maybe talk to them about what the time frame would be. I haven't done that yet, just because I still want to kind of get us going and make sure we're going in the right direction, but that's certainly something staff could do.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm just going to see if you wanted to jump in at all.
Yes, I think that perhaps we can get started. Can you hear me?
Yep.
But we have to borrow money to do this. We don't have this money to do this yet, correct?
We have just the 3 million which was that loan from the LTAR fund, the general fund, that we would have if we wanted to move forward with design. But yes, you're correct. If there was construction costs, the 3 million would not cover that.
Okay, and are we thinking about fixing any of the problems we have now, or we're just going to leave them until we replace all of this?
Well, I think our desire is to move forward with these projects on as quickly of a time frame as possible. Again, I'm trying to give worst case scenarios for working with these other agencies that we have no control over. I guess in the short term, the options are is we continue to work on the maintenance aspects so that we know that the system that we do have is as clean and free and available as possible.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the answer is yes, you're doing the short-term things at the same time. It's not there's no silver bullets in those though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Councilmember Barentine.
Just as a clarification, because that's kind of my question too, I didn't hear you say that we were working on the short-term things too. I heard the mayor say that, but not you.
Sure. I think I talked about it a little bit at the start. There's so just our short-term efforts are focused on maintenance. So we're cleaning out the Oxford line. We're repairing that section of the Jason Court right at the end of the Jason line, which is right here, right near Rotolo Park. So those are some of, and really throughout the system, we're going to be starting that system-wide cleaning effort for all of the storm sewer in the city. So those are our short-term efforts to kind of keep the system that we do have as clean and open for drainage as possible.
Correct, because we already found out that we have a 5-year pipe or 2-year pipe or 10-year pipe or 25-year pipe, but if it's half full, it's no longer a 25-year pipe or 10-year pipe.
Yep.
So I thought that was kind of a given, but for this discussion, because we already, have that maintenance piece, should be being done. But in this map, could you go ahead and put the color one up there?
Sure.
The existing storm sewer pipe?
Uh-huh. Let me just jump back. Oops, that one?
Correct, and the colors are a little bit hard to see. So in the area for S1, do you have like a little pointer or something? So in where it would be for S1, S2, and S3 there?
Yep, so S1 is right there. My hand's kind of shaky. Here's S2. Then
Okay.
there's the greenway, and then here's S3.
So how many S3, up there on the S3, how many 5-year pipes do you have going into bigger pipes? Because it looks like you have at the beginning what looks to be potentially 5-year pipes.
Yep.
Size, and we're talking about size of pipes, going into bigger pipes, going back into smaller pipes. And that was, I think, the original concern about trying to do some mitigation with those smaller sections where you've got smaller pipe that's backing up onto Broadway and causing problems actually on the other side for Lincoln. And then you've got some bigger pipes, but that doesn't help because then it flows back into a smaller one. So I thought we were going to be doing a little bit of, we could mitigate some of the problem there by just taking out some of those bottlenecks right away while we're working on that.
I see,
Sanitation.
yes, so, oh, excuse me. Yep, was that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
while we're working on the Santa Fe piece.
Sure.
I
So
mean, we can't wait a year and a half to do that, and I don't want to give anybody the impression that we're going to wait for a year and a half before we start doing anything because we want to work from S1 up to S3. There's a lot of stuff apparently we can do in S3 because we got some, okay.
yeah, I'll get to that one next. So just so you realize, so these 3 little lines here all feed into this line. So this is the end of Cherokee. There's a cul-de-sac there, and that's what empties into, I should probably just jump to a larger thing. But, so yes, you can see this is a dark 5-year there along Cherokee, and then this goes to Tufts. That's the darker line, which indicates that it's less than a 5-year storm event through there. at the very end. So it's again, kind of the bathtub drain all comes to Cherokee, and that's less than 5 year right now.
All right, so when I was walking these last several months, you did have some flooding going on the Lincoln side of Broadway because it's backing up because we don't have a pipe sufficient enough to even get in there. So no matter how big we put the pipe at the end, if the water's got to go through a 5 year pipe, it's only going to get 5 year water at the end size because that's all that can go through. So
Let me
I'm
jump
just trying
ahead
to
so we
make
can.
sure that we get that whole thing maybe going for that side too.
Okay. Yeah, so this shows, just jumping ahead here to S3. So here again, this is the outlet, the bottom of the bathtub drain for S3, right here at the Greenway, at the end of the Cherokee cul-de-sac. And so we're suggesting to replace this section of Cherokee along Tufts. Here's Broadway, and then a short section over this way, and doing all of that as part of this S3A. So what this does, I believe this was all, yeah, this is all less than the 5 year pipe right now. So we would replace that to the 25 year standard. And then anything that's upstream that's less than 5, it would be helped. It wouldn't alleviate to the level of the 25, but this remainder section of S3B would still be improved because now you've got a larger pipe going down to the outlet. Does that make sense?
I had a conversation with somebody trying to, and I want to wrap my head around this. So if you've got a 5 year pipe where the water goes into, and you got a 10 at the other side, it's still restricted at how much water can go ahead and go into that pipe to begin with. So that's why I'm trying to see that we have some multi-purpose issues that we're dealing with, because I think that there are some little bottlenecks up there that would actually help that system, rather than having a big pipe that only has 5 year pipe water running through it. So, and they even gave me a demonstration. So I think I understand it pretty well.
Okay.
That why the backup is happening on Broadway is still going to happen if we only have the 5 year pipe there. And if we have that 5 going into a 10 and back into a 5, it's restricting it again and still going to back it up to the front. So I just want to know that we're doing not just the Santa Fe, that we've got some pieces of this bottleneck piece that's happening on the Broadway, more toward the Broadway area. I think there's a lot that can be done aside from maintenance.
Okay.
And just
Yep.
whether we're doing any pricing for that.
Sure. So,
That makes sense, sorry.
okay. And so let me just go through S3A here as well. I guess that is my next slide. So one of the things we've heard from property owners in this area is that, and you can see it if you drive Broadway, this is a low spot right through this block, or maybe even these couple of blocks. And so it's kind of coming down, and there's inadequate number of catch basins along Broadway. And then what we heard was that was coming over the curb and then going down into the streets. So it wasn't just necessarily the water, falling right on that site, but it was coming off because this was undersized. And so part of this is not just upsizing the pipes along here, but adding more inlets along Broadway so we don't have that situation of the water flowing from an inadequate system. But you're right, S3B, which goes up and to the right up here, would be helped some because there's a larger outlet, but it still would have a smaller, until we replace that, it's still at that 5 year capacity. Okay.
Councilmember Wink, I thought had.
So I just want to be sure I'm understanding Member Barentine's request and what you've been saying, Director DeAndre. It seems that if we move forward with the plan, this proposal for S3A, increasing it to the 25 year pipe, or 25 year capacity, the issues that may affect Lincoln and Broadway and all of the S3B, S4 would be alleviated. I mean, until that time, it's not fixed, but that is in the plan here. And so we're not only talking about the Santa Fe areas a little bit more west of town, but here in our plan is indeed something to alleviate the Lincoln
Yes.
challenges right now.
So the benefits of this is that we can move forward with design very quickly. So we don't have those impediments of the railroad and CDOT like we have
Right.
in the other projects. So this is fairly straightforward in terms of design. What we want to make sure of is that by increasing this size and basically adding more water right here, if we don't have S2 and S1 completed yet, we obviously don't want to
Right.
add more water to an already existing problem. So Caliber has looked at that preliminarily and thinks that this can be accommodated if let's say we've started this fall. We just want to make sure, and that would be the first task as we get into final design, is to really make sure that is the case. And perhaps we have to dig out Rotolo Park or a little bit more maybe to have that as an interim condition. But that would be the intent, is to move forward with S3A with design on a separate contract and do that analysis to make sure we're not impeding or affecting folks downstream.
Good, thank you.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Oh,
also.
sorry.
When you say this fall, you don't mean 2019, do you? You
Oh,
mean
I'm sorry.
2020?
Yeah, I'm
Thank
already
you.
into 2020.
Sure, understood, thank you. And secondarily, do we have estimates yet on the expense associated with S3B and S4?
Sure. So S3A, we've estimated again at the 25-year level at about $3.5 million. The total cost for all of S3, I'm gonna have to look at the shown on there, but I just can't read it.
I've got you. So 7 total
Is
with
it-
S3A being 3.5 of it?
Yeah,
So we've got another 3.9?
yeah.
Okay. And so what would the timeline be? If we were to do S3A, as you mentioned, call it next fall, how much time gap would there be before we look to get S3B and 4 in?
I really think, why we brought this project forward was, again, it goes back to the funding. So as we determine the rates, which we'll be doing over the next several months, it's that tolerance level for the community, is how much will that, let's say we do S1, S2, and S3A, what is the dollar amount per month associated with that for a typical property? And if, let's say, that was tolerable, maybe we have to go a little bit higher than to do S3B. So
Sure.
that's why we're trying to just balance that to address the most immediate needs. That's why we kind of broke the two projects up. But we certainly could look at doing all of S3A as well, given the cost savings in S2 as a result of that reanalysis.
Sure. It's tempting for me, and I know that another 3.9 million is very real money for citizens, but maybe this is a separate discussion. So if we were to just do S3A at the 3.5, we're going to, it sounds like a bond measure, at least what's been proposed, and that there's a lot more discussion around that. When would we even be going out for, would it be a second bond that we would go for any cleanup projects at a later date, or any projects that we have left uncompleted, such as an S3B or an S4?
I think, again, we're going to have to get that information from the bond staff as to how long would it take us. Let's just say, we've been talking about 40 million. How long would that take to pay back, and then when could we realistically start to do additional projects?
Understood.
So at this time, I don't have that timeline yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem, just checking in with you. Anything you want to ask?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The problem on the alleys on Acoma and Bannock, we aren't even looking at addressing those. Is that correct?
Well, I think, and I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, you couldn't see me pointing at the screen, but we really
Okay.
think, we will do the analysis and the detailed design, but I really think that those are probably sized correctly, because the intent is only to take the water from the alley. The problem
Okay.
occurs when it comes over, when Broadway can't handle it and it's coming from other areas, then it is too small to handle that. So if we size the major pipes correctly, the smaller ones should be adequate.
Okay, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. My question about the Bannock Alley in particular is that drain in the center of the Bannock Alley is funneling water back to a coma, which is actually illegal to direct it back into a flood, the area that the water is coming from.
So you're saying it's going up, it's pushing it back upstream?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the Bannock, the drain in the Bannock Alley, that drain, that culvert goes back out to a coma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think
So-
we will definitely look at that as part of the detailed design. That will be an element to that. And if we need to upsize those pipes, we will. That would be included in there. Again, we have a 25% contingency in these overall costs. So the intent would be is to do what's ever necessary within that area, and we would look at all of those pipes.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one other concern, and that is when I was visiting, campaigning down in the area of Rotolo Park, a number of people are very concerned about that being an accident waiting to happen because that area fills up with water very quickly and children are playing there and a lot of the neighbors are really concerned. And if we make it deeper, I think it's just going to make it worse.
Okay, duly noted.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
Thank you. I kind of want to piggyback on just a question that was asked by Councilmember Cuesta. So if we go back to the pricing slide, which is the proposed projects.
Or perhaps that one?
No, I think it is. Go up one. Go up one. It was before that project prioritization.
Oh, sorry, other way.
There we go.
Mhm.
So this is where my confusion, I think I need to understand this. So the entire S3, which is S3, S3A, S3B, is 7.4 million.
Correct.
But then if I look at this slide here, it looks like this stretches out quite a bit. I think it's more than just S3B. Is that right or no?
This is, yeah, so this is S4 right there, that one that kind of goes north-south.
Okay.
And then at that junction, this is S3B, and then this is S3A.
So if we jump forward a couple slides to where the S3A and S3B. So S3B is a lot longer than just that little aspect. There's a lot
Yes,
more
I'm
there.
sorry, I
Okay.
should have shown everything on this slide, but yeah, S3B then goes just
Okay.
like it shows on the map here.
Perfect, so it's just not that. Because
Yeah.
I was trying to understand, so S4 is a lot bigger than that as well.
Yes,
S3B is a lot bigger as well. So then just getting an understanding of what the price or what the cost is for the S3B and the S4. Just understand, because S4 is only 688,000, somewhere
Yep.
along the line, so.
so if, as it's shown on this map back here, so this shows S3 total as 7.4 million. So if we're at about 3.5 for S3A, then S3B would be about 3.9, I think. Councilman Cuesta calculated it. And then the S4 looks like 688. I don't have my glasses on. So,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
Kind of touched on this, but I'm not quite understanding, I think. So what is the benefit to breaking S3 into
Member
two
Martinez,
parts?
can you pull it just a
Oh.
bit closer?
Sure. What is the benefit to breaking S3 into two different projects instead of treating it as one?
Sure. I think it was, our intent was because we had solely focused with council on just S1 and S2, is, you know, now that we're adding more projects, essentially, we want to look at doing at least maybe a portion of S3A to address the immediate needs and a lot of the citizens that we've heard from, but yet being conscious of what that total dollar amount. So we could certainly spend up to the 40 million and do all of S3, S4, and perhaps something, whatever is next on the list. It's really up to council. I think we're just throwing it out there as an option to
option.
maybe do something more.
Okay.
given the changes to the dollar amount for S2.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay. So this just summarizes what we've talked about in terms of these are those updated costs. Here's the cost for S3, and again, we could always add in S3B or S4. I did want to put in here one of the items in the cost estimates. They've only included removal, they're assuming just the removal of the pavement directly over where the pipe is. So that might be a 10-foot width. Really, when we're going in here and doing this, we should really look at replacing the entire width of the street at the same time. We also, so that's what that is reflected in that additional road work and paving number. Just as we're experiencing now as well, the city of Sheridan has very specific requirements on what type of asphalt they want to go back in. They also require flow fill, which is a little bit more expensive. Both of those products, that polymer asphalt and the flow fill, is more expensive. So we know that was not included in the cost. So I'm just leaving us a little bit of wiggle room there. And then as long as we're in there digging, we might as well look at this, if wherever there is sanitary sewer and water, and do some repairs or replacement at the same time. So typically in our streets, we have the sanitary sewer is in the alleys, but on a side street, you know, the cross streets, they do come out. And so does it make sense to look at those right now and at least evaluate them? So the additional costs for those, for the roadway work, would come from the road and bridge account, so not from the storm sewer, not from the bond issuance. And the sanitary sewer and water repairs, if needed, again, we'd have to get in there and look at those more closely, but if needed, those would come from those respective utility funds, not the stormwater fund. So any questions on that? Okay. All right, and I guess that's it. So open it up for questions.
All right, council, further questions? I'll have one. Do you think it's possible to, we've got lots of bits of information about what our current ongoing work is that you're doing right now, as well as what is going to happen with these larger projects, which was the purpose of tonight, was to talk about these big projects and get some agreement about whether we're going to move them forward or not. Is there a way to do, I don't know if it's a 3-dimensional or a 2-dimensional Gantt chart that would show what's happening now, the amount of money that's going to that, and then also how these fit in over time, and just rough estimates of when it would be? I mean, the design function is going to take quite a while, but we've got to get that started first, and then when would it, if it got all approved, if we got funding?
Gotcha.
Sort of this 10-year thing that you've already started to develop here. I don't know if that would help everybody to realize that we're not just waiting on this, because I do think people are, we are doing some things right now, and if we need to evaluate some things further that you mentioned tonight between Bannock and Mayor Pro Tem again tonight, between Bannock and Acoma, we need to account for that kind of adjustment and let it be known. So is there a way to do that you think would be
Certainly,
visual?
yeah, more of a visual, of timeline and overall schedule, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councilmember Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. When we were talking about the Acoma Bannock affected area, you did mention, or you said that in addressing the size of the pipe at S3, yes, thank you, S3A, what has been happening, what is currently happening on Bannock and Acoma should be relieved by repairing the size of the, or adjusting the size of the pipe here with S3A. I'm wondering to what degree we can get some numbers about, or projections or prediction, just based on, you know, a lot of factors that I don't have expertise in, but I'm wondering if we can, just to help the citizens sort of anticipate, not expect, but anticipate, or us even, level of change or degree of change to the Bannock and Nakoma areas based on this? Like, do we have some more exact numbers that can guide us or understand, you know what I mean?
So,
Is it
you mean for these
50%
smaller
improved?
pipes that run through the alleyways?
Will
or between
S3A
properties?
improve what's happening on Bannock and Nakoma
Oh.
to by 50% or by 2%, or to what degree will XYZ metrics on those two
Sure.
streets that we've seen be so difficult change?
Yeah.
The word should kind of scares me sometimes.
So I think that will take more detailed design, so we would have to either work with Caliber and have them do some more work, which would be additional cost, or we could roll that into the final design for this project. So if we wanted those answers sooner rather than later, we would need to basically start with some additional design at this area.
Thank you, Maria. No, I'm just one individual. I mean, does that make sense to the rest of council?
Yeah, to the best,
Certainly
the
curious.
best that we can. I think that would be helpful if we know we're going to have a return on the investment and to what level. Makes sense, if it
Okay.
can be determined. I mean, otherwise, why are we doing this,
Yeah.
right?
Well, again, I believe our intuitive answer from Caliber is that this will help. The question is, do these other pipes need to be upsized or not? That's the question. And they're thinking no, that this handles the water that falls in the alley, that's collected through the alley. To do that, though, to be definitive about that, we would need to do some additional design. So again, with the Caliber study, we're at the 30,000 foot level. We want to come down now to get more detailed for some of those smaller pipes.
I think Member Cuesta was next, and then Member Valentine.
Thank you, Mayor. So staff is looking for feedback from council on further analysis needed and/or direction to proceed to recommendation on the scope of initial projects to fund, design, and construct. Are you looking for a yes or no on the, getting back to the main slide, I guess the primary proposal or the alternative this evening?
I think the alternative is really, it's not feasible at this time, so I don't think we would recommend that, given the additional costs and the still significant amount of work we would have to do to kind of bypass all of those utilities. So I think what we're recommending as staff is to proceed with project S1 and S2, and then if you wanted to, or at least that's what we would consider, and then do you want to do anything beyond that? And then we would come back with design proposals and then base our funding based on whatever level of projects or number of projects council wanted to do.
Thank you. I guess where I'm going with the second question here is, are we reaching a point where we're getting close to making, I wouldn't say final decisions, but decisions that are going to put us in a motion where it's going to be more expensive and challenging to reverse course after this? If we say, yes, proceed tonight, and let's say we get designs back that we don't like, how much time do we lose on that? How much expense is associated with that?
I think the more of the issue is just about the level of funding. So let's say this is what is acceptable to council. If this equates to a certain dollar amount per month that you feel is not tenable by citizens, then that's where we would probably have to go back to square one. I don't think the design is going to be the issue as much as just, is that dollar amount tolerable within the community?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Valentine.
To Councilmember Wink's point, can we get the information on how much it would alleviate the problems that Acoma and Bannock are having if we just did the maintenance? I mean, we've already gotten some pretty solid information that the restriction, because the material that was in the pipe on Oxford is actually kind of what caused that problem, and now we're going to have to get all of that out of there. And any pipe size that we put in, if we don't maintain it, obviously reduces the capacity of the pipe. So can we get the information on how much that will alleviate the problem? And then where is the maintenance and the cost of this in order to go ahead and make the pipes that we currently have function to the capacity that they're currently supposed to do?
Yes, so that would be a cost on top of this that would be worked into that price or that stormwater rate study. So
Well,
the
not on-
maintenance and,
Well, we already have we have a certain amount of maintenance that's supposed to be being done already. Where are we at with, so no maintenance is included in this amount of money?
this is just for the projects, what that slide shows.
Knowing
Yes.
that the maintenance, though, for what you said earlier, would go ahead and increase the capacity of the pipes we currently have, and therefore, to Councilmember Wink's point, alleviate the problem.
Well, I
Or
don't
at
know if
least mitigate it.
Well, I think by cleaning out the pipes, we can certainly maximize it to the size, that's capable. But if you look at this slide again, we go back to that overall. Oops. So this assumes that the pipe is operating at full capacity. So there is no accumulations of debris within them.
Correct,
So-
and we've already identified that we've got 5-year pipe going into 10-year pipe going into 5-year pipe, so that we already have some bottleneck within this
Yep.
system. And then we've seen tons of pictures already, so we're pretty well aware that a lot of these pipes are already not at their capacity because they have not been maintained. But the maintenance of this hasn't been included in any of this.
So we are proceeding, so we are going to issue a contract to clean out this pipe, the Oxford line, because we know those are the ones we've seen the pictures of. And that we have debris accumulations in here. But that is too large of a pipe for staff to go in and clean that out. It will literally be bucketing it out, and they need, again, to be in that confined space, they need special training and special protective equipment to be in there. We have hired 2 staff people. They start, I believe, next week. We were going to hire 2 maintenance techs who are focused solely on going around the city to clean the entire storm sewer system. They will be mapping that as well. And so they're using an existing Vector truck of utilities, and basically we'll start at one end of the system. And then clean it out. And we'll be monitoring that and documenting that physically through our GIS system, as well as through maintenance records. So we don't know if there's any debris, let's say, down in this area, because I don't think people have been in those pipes or really televised them or done anything. But again, we know that there's debris buildup in here because staff has walked through there and done some televising. But we'll get into that, and we'll provide periodic updates to council and the public. Let's say, we find some debris up in these areas, we'll report that back.
Well, we have a lot of pictures from the Acoma and Bannock area. There were tons of pictures that we saw where that was already, some of them a third or a fourth
In that
done.
area?
And that would make sense that a lot of that debris kept going down the system and then ended up at Oxford. And I think that was part of what Caliber might have been referring to in some of the issues before the sinkhole happened. So I would respectfully disagree that we have a lot of pictures on that Acoma and Bannock area that that those pipes were still having some trouble, but I'd like to just get to Councilmember Wink's point. If we go ahead and do the maintenance, how much we'll go ahead and see some relief for those people as well. So I'm sure that'll be part of the study. All right. And what's the timeline, do you think, that we could go ahead and do that, since that would probably be the easiest and quickest, and probably, I mean, we are supposed to be maintaining them, so it is separate process.
To analyze that, or
Yeah.
to do the maintenance work itself? The
Both.
cleaning? The both?
Because
The-
I think that analyzing it, since it's not included in this cost, will become a significant discussion point in how we move forward. Because if cleaning the current pipes to their current capacity could alleviate it right away, that may be the biggest bang for our buck right away, while we're trying to work out the design and the rest of it. So that's why I'm trying to see, we at least have $3.1 million. We're trying to see how best to make sure that we don't have these kind of problems again, so.
Yeah, so again, we just hired those 2 staff people. I believe they begin next Monday. So we can certainly start in this portion of town and work our way from east to west to evaluate those pipes and report on the condition. So How much relief that will bring? I don't know that it will. Unless those pipes are significantly filled, I don't know that they will bring much more relief. Again, if the outlet, the bathtub drain is less than 5 years, cleaning out the pipes probably won't do, they'll do some, but just not as much as doing the actual project.
And how full was the Oxford pipe?
In areas, it was up to 4 feet deep, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Member Wink has a question or comment.
Thank you, Mayor. So, given the area Member Barentine and I were talking about is kind of a high emergency area. Every time we have significant precipitation, I do like the idea of some alleviation with these 2 new staff members beginning so soon as next week. And thank you for all the work we've done on this since July 24th. When we spoke about the cost to the consultants increasing to perhaps provide more granular detail on the percent improvement or a predicted percentage of improvement in terms of flow to the Bannock-Acoma area through the S3A pipe, what does that cost look like? Because my mind right now is thinking, I would rather, without knowing, I would rather add the extra cost immediately into the design so that we can make more informed decisions sooner. You made mention of a few other supporting details in terms of work we could do to add to that alleviation of that area of town. But I think first and foremost, I'd really like to be able to, as a council, put our finger on how much improvement we can create from S3.
Okay.
And I apologize that, you know, council is something else. You're here once a week. I feel as if this is something maybe I could have said months ago, and I'm saying it now. So I know that's got to be tough on staff. But I would. Do you know what it would cost? The extra maybe amount of time for the consultants to actually give us those numbers sooner?
Yeah, so I think we're talking again about going from the 30,000 level down
Exactly.
to the next level.
And not waiting.
And you can see here, so they've got the model
Yeah.
for these pipes. These are the large ones in that area. And this one, this green one, I think that, if I can see correctly, that's 100-year storm event. So they've got the backbone of the system. Now it's finding those smaller pipes in the area, and do those need to be upsized? Do those, help the overall project, and kind of refine that basically? I'm gonna say probably in that $15,000 to $20,000 range.
I just think with something so important that we do all we can to have all of the data available that we can use to make the best decisions possible. And before we get to the point where maybe it's a little tougher to make changes to our process. If we can spend some more money to save us money in the long run and save lives, bring more security to the community, maybe we should do it.
I might be confused here, but I thought that we'd already said yes to those things and that we were moving forward on, and your hiring of the 2 people is a major part of this, and with the whole design plan for how to clean everything out, find problem areas so that then we can address them if they are bigger dollar. And that tonight we're looking at these big projects and whether or not council wants you to move forward to begin to give the money that we need to for the design thing and then start to figure out how we're going to pay for this.
Correct, and
But
I think
both of them need to be happening. We're not saying
Yep.
no to one and yes to another. We're saying yes, yes.
Yep.
But we are limited in one of them, which is the big one.
And just to clarify, I think Councilmember Wink's question or request might be is to, again, our next step, if we were to move forward with design, would be to go to that next level down and even get more granular in terms of the design. So I think it's taking that intermediate step to get a little bit more information on S3 about, what exactly entails all of those project elements, if I can summarize.
Mayor Pro Tem, making some space for you here.
I don't have anything right now.
Okay. That's fine, just want to make sure. Councilmember Barentine.
I need a clarification because looking at the budget and the amount of money that we've had to spend on the sinkhole, what I was gathering from you is we don't have any money for maintenance and it hasn't been put into this piece of it. So that's what I was understanding. So we can't do the maintenance piece of it on the smaller projects. And I didn't think we were just talking about the larger projects, but the best way to go ahead and attack this problem. And I am concerned that if we give $3.1 million and the best bang for the buck that we can get to at least get the current pipes up to the current capacity and do the maintenance, then we may be better off going ahead and making sure that happens. And what I heard you say is we don't have the money for the maintenance right now.
Well, I think we do have the money in this year's budget. So I'd have to look at, so we're bringing in so much per year with our current rates.
Around $300,000, yeah.
I think it's, because we
Well, and
upped
then
it
we have-
last year, so I think it's a little bit more.
And then we have the debt we have to pay still from
Yep.
2002.
So we have expenses. So I think, again, with part of that rate study is if we have these two positions, if we add additional positions like a project manager, can the base cost cover something? But then do we need to incur, 33 million plus something for maintenance for that ongoing cost into the future?
Right, so that's why I'm just trying to clear up the mayor's confusion on why that was being asked, because quite honestly, that's what I'm hearing is we don't have money for that, and if we kind of can get an idea of what that would cost and what the benefit would be, maybe that would really be the best thing to do while we're doing the design plan for the rest of it and the fee schedule, and maybe that would be the best thing we could do with the $3.1 million. I don't know, but that's why I asked the question.
Sure.
If that cleared up your question?
I think you misunderstood a little bit of it. It's a great question. So you're
Ye-
saying yes,
okay.
that's
Yeah.
what I thought we were doing.
And I apologize if that didn't come across,
Yeah.
but yeah, the intent is that we're doing the maintenance simultaneously or hopefully in advance of as we talk about these very large cost projects.
But the total amount of what the maintenance would be to clear these out to their current capacity is something we don't actually know right now.
Well, it would be the staff people, for the most part, and the cleaning of the Oxford line, which we have a rough estimate on. But I think it's the ongoing costs year over year because we would want to dedicate, make sure that we're doing that on a consistent basis. I think that's what I'm hesitant to say yes to.
And that's why I think that it's an important discussion, because if we need to delve into that $3.1 million to make that happen, that's the conversation that I want to have. So we need to have a little bit better picture of what that would be for this, especially this area.
What we're going
Thank
to
you.
use the 3.1 for?
If it would be better for us in order to go ahead and complete the entire maintenance, we might want to delve into some of that $3.1 million to help pay for that portion of it. And I'd like to see the maintenance be a part of this overall look instead of just the three big projects, because you made it very clear that maintenance is not included in any one of these projects.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought we were beyond this portion of the conversation as well. I thought we established that we were cleaning those pipes and that we had funding set aside for it. Is that not the case then? Am I misunderstanding that?
So we do have money allocated, or we're using that, we're going to use the 3.1 million. So we will come back to you with the bids for the Oxford pipe cleaning. That will come from the 3.1 million. Again, my hesitancy is we're going to hire 2 people, and we will pay for those costs out of that 3.1 million, but do we have those costs ongoing into the future? That's and if there's other maintenance needs, if we uncover, for example, a lot of, like the Jason Court, a lot of where the bottom of the pipe is failed, have we accounted any money? We will need to account money beyond the 3.1 million for those replacement of those lines or fixing the bottom of the pipe somehow.
Maybe it's the language we're using here. That to me is a replacement, not maintenance.
Okay.
And that's the kind of thing, a replacement, a repair is something that I'm more comfortable bonding. I don't want to bond maintenance, and I would think most citizens don't, that's something that should be just built into the annual revenue that the city is spending. So I would be apprehensive on using bonds money for maintenance. But just, I guess, to conclude there, it is scheduled, or we got it going out to bid, that those pipes will be cleaned. This isn't something we're just starting this conversation now. This is
No.
something that the city has had in motion.
That
Thank
is
you.
correct.
Thank you. That helped. All right. Anything else? All right, let's, do you want a quick stretch break? We're ready to keep moving? We're ready to keep moving, all right. You'd like a break? All right, 5 minutes. Take a quick break. Be back here in 5 minutes.
Try not to touch it.
So the green ones?
Green and, yeah, green and blue. Okay.
Well, Dave has the same thing, so.
Hey, Carl. Hey, I'm going back to this. looks like.
It's got a 9-volt.
Yeah, 1.9.
I know, it's, I mean, what's the longest, they basically,
Minutes. I'm happy to bring these things up at least in my council meetings, just to get some attention. Doesn't necessarily mean it's agenda, just to bring it to the public's attention.
All right, folks, I asked Director DeAndre to come back because as I left the room, I thought, we didn't really give you probably direction yet in a clear way. We might have, I mean, I don't think we did. So because I'm unclear, we can all challenge and make sure I'm clear. So you would like to know whether we want to move forward on these bigger projects and the design piece of it. Is that correct?
I think the direction looking for tonight is there additional analysis requested, such as Councilmember Wink suggested, or are we ready to move to the next step with, moving towards a request for proposals for design services, and, staff would start that aspect of it as we continue to talk about funding and going forward with the rate study, that sort of thing. So again, everything moving simultaneously in terms of the projects. Our next step would be is what projects do you want to do? And if so, then do we move to the next step, which would be final design?
All the time knowing that we're going to continue to do what is some maintenance and repairing as it gets found at the same time. And
Correct.
yet, and it's possible for you to actually produce some of the finances of that currently. I mean, we have some stuff in our budget next year. That's there.
Yes.
But we know that going forward, we're going to have to get more probably.
Correct, which would be the third leg of that stool, of the four-legged stool, I guess, is the funding. So we will continue to talk with council as we finish the storm rate study. We will continue to talk to council about the master plan as those elements get completed. So all those other pieces, we will continue to move forward.
All right, let's hear from everybody where they want to see us move forward. Councilmember Cuesta.
Are we beyond questions?
Oh, if you have another question, please.
I do have one more.
Yeah.
Director DeAndre, could I have you go back to the slide that's titled Alternative Cost Estimates, and it has the original alignment versus the alternate?
This one?
No, I believe it was, here we go.
Oops, sorry.
That is the one, thank you. So it comes, the staff's recommendation, the original alignment comes to $30.2 million.
Correct.
And then, could I please have you go 2 slides prior to that, and it lays out the price associated with, it looks like, each segment. Okay, so I did the 30.2 that you had on the staff's recommendation, and then added all these others, and I came to $57 million. Are all these, I know that the recommendations tonight are all 25-year pipe. Are all of these projects 25-year pipe as well?
Yes.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up or ask. I do keep wondering if we could do the whole city right now, every project, 10 years, keep them maintained, and always have, in one fell swoop, we get it all done, as opposed to doing it half the project now and then half later, having to go back to voters. It's something that seems appealing to me. Now, given I know there's many pros and cons, we'd love to have a 100-year pipe throughout the city, but finances aren't going to allow for that. Has that been a consideration yet, doing this on a 10-year scale, and doing, if not all, most of the projects?
I think that's still a consideration for council to keep in mind. If I remember correctly, the total for the 10-year storms was around the $40 million mark. But that was before we changed the price for S2 as well. But yeah, I think, again, that's a policy question. I think the recommendation from Caliber was to go to the larger size
Sure.
for the bigger bang for the buck, as long as we're doing it. But that still is definitely on the table.
You bet. So to use that figure, I thought it was about 40 million too on the 10-year pipes, and credit to Mr. Adams for finding that adjustment. That took it down about 9 million. So that might put us in
Yeah.
the low 30s, which is what we're at for this recommended project here. And that to me is the choice that I have in my head: is do we do half of it at 25 years, or do we do it all at that same price at 10 years? So that's kind of what I'm wrestling with myself. Thank you.
So we could go forward and finding out what both of those are going forward. That's part of it too, right? So yeah,
If
so you
that
don't
is
have to make a
available,
choice tonight
Okay.
between those two.
And if that's something that, and I appreciate Councilmember Zwink, I know each one of these questions I ask isn't easily resolved, and that there's expense and work behind that. But if that's another proposal we could see, I would certainly like to consider it, and even get feedback, from constituents and neighbors as well, so that it's at least out there in public and people can provide thoughts on it too.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councilmember Wink, can I just come around the room here? What do you think?
Sorry. What do
Move
I think about
forward
moving forward on not using the alternative, the route, and going forward with everything we've been discussing? Yes, I think we should move forward with that. Yep, that makes the most sense.
All right, Councilmember
yeah.
Martinez?
Yeah, I'm on board to move forward. I would prefer to stay at the 25-year like we've outlined in these first three projects. The only thing that I am unsure about is what's the benefit between doing all of S3 or breaking that into parts. So if the additional analysis or data that Councilmember Wink asked for would help influence that, I would be on board. But I'm kind of leaning like, let's just do all of S1, S2, and S3. But let's move forward as quickly as possible.
Councilmember Sierra?
I would agree with the one aspect of it that I know was outlined within the document as well as talked about earlier was just S3, and also there's a statement in there that does state that there would be no negative impacts to downstream if we were to do the S3. So I'm trying to understand just really the timing of S3, when that could begin, whether it could be done concurrently with our S1 and S2 or even earlier. That aspect of it. I think I would put more of a precedence or a greater priority with the S3A aspect of it instead of the S3B. But just understand that entire timing and what we can do. So.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Barentine, and then we'll come to you, Mayor Pro Tem, in just a minute.
I would like to move forward with this as soon as possible, but Councilmember Questa brings up a really good point, and that's that we need to know the cost between the two, and the fact that this is, we haven't made any decisions on this project, so I'm kind of, it seems as if we were only going to go with the 25, but I think we need to know for both the 10 and the 25, along with making sure that the pipes that we currently have at their capacity, maybe we wouldn't have had this happen if the current pipes we had were just at the capacity that they could be. I don't know. But you mentioned earlier, and rightfully so, that once the rate study comes in, this council is going to have to make a decision on what the citizens can bear, the cost that they can bear. And if they cannot bear the cost of a 25-year, we better know what the cost of the 10 is. So especially if we could get the whole thing done at one time and then properly maintain them so that they're at the capacity, at their full capacity, they may function more than adequate in order to keep everybody safe and keep the flooding at bay. So I certainly want to move forward with this, but all we're doing is going ahead and setting the parameters for the RFP to go ahead and start getting some information then, correct?
Correct, and we can come back with that totals very easily, and I can have that to you in the council update yet this week.
Right. As well as the information on the current maintenance and what we're going to be able to do and what that's going to cost. Because in looking at the budget, I don't think that we really have that scheduled in very well this year. But if you could come back with that information as well, I'd appreciate it. But of course, I want to move forward and get the RFP going. But to Councilmember Questa's, I mean, it may turn out that the fee for this is not something that is reasonable to even put on them in a period of time that would even give us an opportunity to make this happen in a timely manner. So we want to make sure that we have both.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I too would like the cost comparison for the 10-year pipe as well, because I still have concerns about other areas of infrastructure where we need to spend money. And I think that we do need to fix this problem, but I think that we need to be wise about how we do it, because I think we have other infrastructure areas that we need to address as well. Thank you.
All right, the last thing I want to see happen is for us to kick this down the road to another council in 20 years that says, what happened back then? So I'm glad to look at the 10-year, but I think at that point, we're all going to have to really decide, are we going to do it or not? We can blame all kinds of people from the past for what they didn't do at a time when the city was strapped. And you can think about the 2, 3, 4, 5 years after that knowledge was there, and then it gets lost, and who was on council and who wasn't, and you ask back then, and they can't even remember some of this. I do not want that to happen again. And we've got parts in the north that need to be very seriously considered in this. So we're only looking at what's currently been the big thing. Next year can be this northern area in District 1, which was part of District 2 at some time too. It's had tremendous damage in homes, and we know that that's connected to the Denver system, so that's a little bit more problematic. But yes, I want to get as much information as we can, do the study right, get all the assessment that we need, and we still have hard decisions to make. This isn't finalizing it tonight. I wish it was easy, but it's not. Councilmember Sierra, did you still have more?
Yeah, just a quick question. Are we going to get more, I know these are conservative estimates in terms of the cost. Are we going to, on the next go around, are we going to get more realistic pricing for what's going to get entailed?
That would come with the final design. So until we have the design, those are go hand in hand. It's iterative, that the design predicates the more detailed cost estimate.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming back down. I just realized we left you in the dark. All right, next item is our wonderful discussion about bulk plane. And here tonight is Senior Planner Brook Bell to discuss the bulk plane and possibilities, along with several more staff. Director Powers, are you sure you don't want to sit up here? All right. Take it away.
Good evening. As was mentioned, my name is
I think you need to have the mics on. Yeah, and you really do have to pull them close for people to hear.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, good evening. If you recall, Community Development staff was here on September 23rd for a bulk plane discussion at that time. We primarily gave an overview of what the current bulk plane regulations are, as well as a review of kind of the history of the bulk plane regulations, and got into trying to make sure that everyone understood just what the bulk plane was, and we can look at that again tonight. So we had some discussion with council on September 23rd, and sort of the outcome of that was council requested that staff schedule a study session with the Planning and Zoning Commission to do three things: review the bulk plane regulations, come up with some possible options for amendments to the bulk plane regulations, and then do some comparisons with bulk plane regulations from other jurisdictions. So we scheduled a study session with the Planning and Zoning Commission for October 22nd, and we had a pretty full agenda that night, and we actually did not get to the bulk plane agenda item. So that was tabled until November 5th. We were tentatively scheduled to come back to council tonight, and we just decided to go ahead and leave that on the agenda. So while we did not get any input from the Planning and Zoning Commission on the bulk plane item, we are here before you tonight, and we've got some options to present, and hopefully we'll have some discussion and perhaps some feedback from council. Following that, they did table the bulk plane discussion item until November 5th, which is their next regular meeting. And so if there's any input tonight, we will take that back to them and continue on with this discussion. So,
Mayor and Mr. Bell, as a quick point of information, I'm not seeing this presentation in the packet. Is it included?
It is the same, it's the same that's in your packet. It's just a graphic for me to point at.
Thank you.
All these exhibits are in your packet.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So
Thank you for the intro of what's going on. That's helpful. I think hopefully this will be an iterative process, but not take too long.
Sure, sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. Before I get into some of the possible amendments to the bulk plan or options for possible amendments, I want to just make sure again that everyone is clear on what the bulk plan is and make sure there's no questions. We kind of redid this diagram, and so this is the bulk plan diagram. And where's my pointer here? Okay, so we've got here a scale drawing, kind of a bird's eye view of a typical 50-foot wide by 125-foot deep property in Inglewood with the alley behind, the street out in front, the sidewalk. And then what's drawn on here is a structure that's at utilizing 5-foot minimum setbacks. And then we've got the bulk plane shown in these dotted lines that form kind of an invisible tent that you can build within. And so in this case, we're measuring out a 12-foot high bulk plane, which is measured from the midpoint of the side property lines. So you go up 12 feet and then in at a 45-degree angle, as you can see here in front. And that continues upward until you hit the maximum 32-foot height that you can go. Now, obviously, most structures are not going to have a flat top. This is just illustrating the plane that you can build within. You can see the garage is much smaller in back, but the structure shown in front would be sort of maximizing that bulk plane. So is there any other, let me go back, any other clarifications on what bulk plane is or how that's measured or anything? Okay. So what I'd like to get into now is some options for possible amendments to the bulk plane regulations, and I want to break them into two parts. The first part would be looking at sort of the R1c Zone District, which allows for single-family residences. Yes.
Could you put your mic on?
Is the bulk plane currently at 12 feet?
It is in the R1A and R1B. It is in the R1C and R2s and R3s. It's currently at 17 feet.
And that's where the issue came in, so that's why I was wondering why we were just seeing the 12. So that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so so first I'd like to talk about the R1c Zone District because it's the only R1 that does have currently the 17-foot bulk plane. The R1A and R1B was never changed. It remained at the 12-foot bulk plane. So this drawing, again, is to scale, and it is you'll see the property lines on the sides here, and this, again, is a typical 50-foot wide property in the R1C. And what I'm showing, and I'll get into a little more detail in a moment, what I'm showing here, again, is the 5-foot side setbacks on each side. 5 feet on each side, taken away from the 50-foot wide lot. You've got a 40-foot wide structure here. And on the sides, I've labeled 3 bulk planes. The first one is a 12-foot bulk plane. The second one is a 15-foot. The third one is a 17-foot. And then again, we've got the 32-foot maximum height here. And I'm going to a little bit better slide here that gets into a little bit more detail. So in the R1C, again here you've got the different bulk planes shown. You can see the dotted line. There's the 12-foot, the 15-foot, and the 17-foot. And you can see how a structure, in this case with 8-foot ceilings, sort of works or doesn't work with that. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead there. Okay. So we start out here, and we've got some minimums. We looked at what is a typical, I'm sorry. That's okay. All right, we've got the foundation, which has to be a minimum of 6 inches above the finished grade next to it. We've got a typical floor joist, and then an 8-foot first floor ceiling space, another floor joist, an 8-foot ceiling space, and then the ceiling joist and the attic up here. And what this drawing illustrates is that with 8-foot ceilings on both the first and second floor, what you can see is that the 17-foot current bulk plane doesn't really have any problems. It clears the structure. The 15-foot bulk plane meets it almost exactly right at that point, because we calculate it right where the side wall of the structure meets the roof sheathing. So, and then you can see the 12-foot bulk plane cuts through actually part of the interior of the house. So to kind of summarize this, in an R1c situation with 8-foot ceilings on your first and second floors, you can get it within the 15-foot bulk plane. However, but that doesn't account for any kinds of kind of variables in your topography on the site. Not all sites are going to be flat, neither side to side nor front to back. So in order, if the bulk plane were decreased to 15 feet and there were any irregularities on the topography on the site, there are some remedies that an architect can employ. One of them is recessing the floor joists into the foundation, actually pushing that first floor down into the foundation and really making the finished floor almost even with grade outside. Another thing that can be done is up in this area, if you had to lower this a little bit, you can, instead of having an 8-foot ceiling through the entire interior, you could have a little bit lower ceiling towards the sidewall and vault it, and such that the ceiling might look like something that I'm showing here, come up and back down. So you'd still have some more volume towards the middle of the structure, but it'd be lower at the sides. That's a lot more difficult to do in an R2 or duplex situation, and I'll explain that in a moment.
Actually, could you explain that again? Because, so are you bringing in the
That's
walls? You're bringing in the walls?
No.
So it won't be 40 foot wide, or?
Let's say we had some grade issues here.
Okay.
And those grade issues ended up pushing the structure up a little bit. What you could do is effectively lower the ceiling on this second floor such that that ceiling was not a flat ceiling like I'm showing here, but a ceiling that was 7 feet where it met the sidewall and then sloped up towards the, for lack of a better word, middle of the room. So you still get more volume in the middle of the room, although the ceiling, it still feels like you have more volume, even though you've only got a 6.5 or 7 foot ceiling at the sidewall. Kind of like you would see in an attic, an angled ceiling. Another thing that can be employed is to actually move this sidewall in either on both stories or on just the second story. So by maybe having the first story at a 5-foot setback and then moving the second story in a couple of feet, it moves you away from that bulk plane because the bulk plane keeps increasing the closer you get to the center of the property. Okay? And so those things can be used a little bit easier in a single family type home because you've got, in this case, 40 feet to play with, and there's different designs you can do. And as we'll see later, that becomes much more difficult in a duplex environment where you've got half the width of the structure devoted to your unit.
Councilmember Wink, I think also had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Bell, when you suggest, or when you mention the option of decreasing the width, maybe on the second floor
Yes.
by a bit, thus relieving the bulk plane challenge, is that best practice in architectural design?
Well, it certainly can and has been done. It can
Yes.
cost more because you're not stacking your walls.
Just wonder about foundational integrity.
It's a different structural, because suddenly, instead of putting all the weight bearing straight down on the foundation, you're jogging it
Yeah.
over. And then you're filling in that space with another roof. So it's not the most efficient.
But it's an option.
It is an option,
Okay, thank you.
yes. This next slide is essentially the
Can I
same.
ask one question, please?
Sure.
I thought the setbacks were changed as well.
No.
So you don't have 3-foot setbacks that they could do?
3-foot setbacks are for small lots or urban lots. And so there are a couple of structure types or categories that can have a 3-foot side setback.
Are any of them with the duplexes? Because we've seen a lot of pictures where it looks like they've only got the 3 feet, making it 6 feet between one property to the other.
No, a duplex could not be built on a small or urban lot. Therefore, a new duplex could not happen.
Are there any other areas that allow, aside from urban lots and
Small lots?
small lots, that would allow a 3-foot setback?
No, they're not.
So they're not allowed to build right up to the property line. They have to have at least a 5-foot setback on each side, which means,
You can build to the property line in a couple of other zone districts, like the MUB1 or B2, that's a 0 lot line, or in some areas of the medical districts. But for this evening, we're talking about the R1c and the R2s and R3s.
oh, okay.
Which
I
all
didn't, I
have
didn't
a-
realize we were just talking about the R1c because you didn't start out with the 17-foot bulk plane at the beginning. So I wasn't sure that we were just talking about R1c because R1c is 17-foot bulk
Correct.
plane, not 15, which is what you started with. So thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, we're looking at 3 options here. One is keeping it at the 17-foot bulk plane. Another is reducing it down to a 15-foot bulk plane. Or a third is reducing it even further back to the 12-foot bulk plane.
Which is what it was originally.
Correct.
And I have homes in R1c, then that's what I'm confused about. I have homes currently in R1c that are 2-story. How in the world were they able to manage it with the 12-foot bulk plane to do a 2-story in R1c then? Doesn't look possible on your picture here.
They likely, as I mentioned, they likely were a narrower structure than what's shown here. This structure is shown going all the way to the 5-foot minimum setback. As you move the walls in, you're not as challenged by the bulk plane because the bulk plane continues to get higher towards the middle of the property.
I'm not talking about new builds. You said that it's always been 12-foot.
There was actually no bulk plane prior to 2004.
Okay.
And there are existing homes all over the city
Okay.
that were built on regular sized lots that have 3-foot side setbacks that are older, that predate the 2004.
Yeah, I just think they're
Zoning
higher. I
code.
just think they're higher. But thanks for clearing up that it went in 2004.
That's
So
correct.
it's structures between 2004 forward that would have had to have gone under.
Correct. That would have had to gone under for a standard lot, a minimum 5-foot side setback, as well as a minimum 12-foot bulk plane.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so this next,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem, are you wanting anything at this point?
No, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, great. Member Wink?
Quick brief question. The figure in the human figure in the drawings is a 6-foot tall person?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
And what I'm moving on to now, that you can see this drawing has the 8-foot ceilings. Then this next drawing is the same exercise, but with 9-foot ceilings. So again, we've got the overall structure, still on a 50-foot lot, 40-foot wide structure. And in this case, we still have the 12-foot bulk plane shown, the 15-foot shown, the 17-foot shown, but now we've got 9-foot ceilings on each of the first and second story, which is where builders have typically wanted to go with new construction. So again, I'm going to go into the detail here, and you can see how a structure with 9-foot ceilings reacts to those different bulk planes. With the 9-foot ceilings, even in a single-family house, if you build all the way to the setback, the only way to comply with the bulk plane is to have a 17-foot bulk plane, okay? It doesn't work with the 15-foot bulk plane, nor the 12-foot bulk plane. So you can see if you have 9-foot ceilings, you're challenged in a greater way to meet those lower bulk planes. You have all the same potential remedies, they're just to a much greater degree that you either have to, you can only sink the first floor into the foundation so much because you have to remain above the outside grade. And you can also only vault the ceiling on the second floor so much because at a certain point building code kicks in and you can only have so much of these lower ceiling heights within the room. So this just illustrates that. You're also getting up close to the 32-foot maximum height. And I forgot to mention in all these slides, this roof pitch is a 6 and 12 roof pitch, which is very common. A 4 and 12 roof pitch tends to be kind of shallow, and a 12 and 12 bulk roof pitch is pretty steep. So a 6 and 12 is a very common roof pitch. Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? Is that what most of the traditional homes that were built before 2004 have for the pitch? In terms, I'm thinking of style.
I would say more suburban older homes tend to have a little bit, let's say in Hampton Hills, are often have a little bit lower roof pitch, like a 4 and 12. A lot of newer homes, be they in Highlands Ranch, have like a 6 and 12. And then a lot of older homes have steeper roofs. Like
Most
an 8
of those, like, let's say, not in Hampton Hills, I mean, they have different styles than that, but they're a little bit higher pitch, right?
I think a lot more of the Victorians and craftsmen
Yeah.
would tend to have a little bit steeper pitched roof than a 6 and 12.
That already exists, like
Correct.
that in Englewood. Okay, thank you.
Correct. So really, you can see how that works with 9-foot ceilings, and there's different combinations of options. You could go with 9-foot ceilings on the first floor, 8-foot ceilings on the second floor, and again in the R1c, there's a little bit more flexibility to move some of the structure in on the side, but that's kind of an overview of the R1c Zone District. And if you'd like, I'll continue talking about the R2 and the R3 districts, and then we can come back and talk about it all as a whole, or we can stop and talk about the R1c right now, if you'd like.
Do any of you have questions at this point, or you want to?
Okay.
No, I guess keep going.
Okay, so really, I don't have different drawings, but for the R2, the R2s and the R3s, it's the same drawing, but we can have a little bit different discussion. So imagine this drawing, again, and this is with 8-foot ceilings. It's on a 50-foot lot, but imagine that it's a duplex. The way these duplexes are being constructed, they've got a party wall right down the middle, such that that party wall is a firewall, and you could, other than your roof shingles being connected over the top, you could literally tear down one side and the other one wouldn't fall down. Structurally, they're separate. But In this overall 40-foot width, when you do a duplex, which would be permitted in the R2s or R3s on a 50-foot lot, you end up with a unit that's 20 feet wide because of the 5-foot setback. And inside a wall to inside a wall, you end up with a unit that's about 19 feet wide. So, so when you add in a stairway, which typically in these duplexes is typically towards that party wall, and it kind of climbs up the party wall from front to back, that stairwell is typically 4 feet wide. You're left with about 15 feet in your width for your rooms, which if you start to get much smaller than that, it's not an ideal size. It starts to get to be a pretty narrow living room or dining room or master bedroom in the upstairs. So your options, you still have your options for kind of dealing with some of the height issues, but you really don't have as good of options to move sidewalls in or sidewall on the second story in. And that's why it's much more critical in the R2 and R3 what this bulk plane is. But the same remedies are still there, although the moving the sidewall in is greatly reduced. And you working with a 20-foot wide or 19 from inside to inside, there's a lot less flexibility of what you can do with that than a 40-foot wide single-family house in the R1c. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, and then I think I'd like to hear from council, and that is that the bulk plane is highly affected by time of year, or actually the effective shadowing that is done by any given structure. So, and what I'm getting at is that obviously the sun angle is very high in the summer, highest at the summer solstice, and very low in the winter, lowest in the winter solstice. Your sun angle is really determined by your latitude. Denver is about 39 degrees north of the equator. And so what results from that is in the summer solstice, let me look at something here real quick. So the sun angle in the summer, say June 21st, is if the sun is in the sky, it is, if 90 is straight up, at the summer solstice, the sun angle is actually 74 degrees. So it is very steep. So that has a great effect on what results in terms of sunlight and, excuse me. Huh. Can you, thank you. Thank you. Okay. I'll try not to hit that. So the sun angle in the middle of summer is very steep, such that a 6-foot fence on the property line shades the adjacent property almost exactly the same as this eave, because it's so steep. Okay, and that's at 74 degrees. In the middle of winter, December 31st, that angle goes down to 27 degrees, from 74 degrees down to 27 degrees, and in fact, that is almost exactly what this angle is. So you can imagine in the middle of winter, the shadow pretty much follows the roof line and comes all the way over here, whereas in the middle of summer, the shadow line is more like right in here. So it has a great effect on the bulk plane. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or entertain any input on some of these options.
Council, questions? Member Sierra?
I guess I'll ask, initial question regarding the bulk plane. So I did get to listen to the previous discussion back in September. One of the questions I had was just about the max height. When does that come into effect? Because none of the drawings that you have here have really met the 32-foot height. So when do houses get built to a 32-foot height, or when does that come into effect?
So I'll show you right here on the 8-foot ceiling drawings. This max height is about 2.5 feet from that 32-foot maximum, okay? So this is about 29.5 feet right there with the 8-foot ceilings. With the 9-foot ceilings, whoops, there's about 6 inches there. So it is almost approaching the 32-foot maximum height. Of course, that's partially a function of your roof pitch. If you've got a flatter roof, you don't even come close to that maximum height. But if you have a steeper roof, much like you would in, as we mentioned, a more of a Victorian or craftsman home, you could be doing some things to, you might need to do some things to get yourself under that. The 32-foot maximum height came in with the 2004 UDC overall, rewrite of it. Prior to that, it was 25 feet.
Member Wink?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm curious as to whether we could hear from a wider reach of the population, Mayor, in terms of their opinions about the bulk plane being changed. If I'm understanding correctly, a small few contributed some feedback, along with a couple of members of council, perhaps. And this is interesting. We all live in our current homes, but I personally would like to hear from some of the community. And I know workshops take time and resources, and that we can't always have workshops to include that many more voices of the citizens. I would almost love to have more than maybe 0.00001% of the population weigh in, maybe from all 4 districts, in terms of the thoughts. And it seems like we have some great options to present, some, visually, some presentations that the citizens could look at and chat with us about, us and staff. Just to hear from a wider percentage. I always feel shy about making a decision based on almost 0% of something, requesting that. Not that one person's voice isn't important, but I would really like to hear from more of the citizens.
I think it's a good point. It would be nice to have something like the trash talks 3 or 4 times around in different, kind of a road show that goes to different districts. But we can do that for sure, I would think. I have a question about in the area, in R1A and R1B, where this did not go into effect, was the thinking that the lots already allow for the kind of building? Or what was, those
So-
areas don't allow for duplexes already, or at least R1A doesn't.
All right, there's a couple of reasons for that. The lot sizes to begin with in the R1A, a standard lot in an R1A is 75 feet wide as opposed to 50 in an R1C. And in an R1B, a standard lot is 60 feet wide. So you have a much wider lot. And in the R1A, your side setbacks, instead of being a minimum of 5, are a minimum of 7. So you're already moving away from that side property line. You could say that already buys you 2 more feet of bulk plane. You could say that the effective bulk plane in an R1A is actually 14 feet, not 12, because you can't get any closer to it anyways. The other thing is they're just generally larger lots. Sometimes without an alley, and the existing building form is more, a little more suburban in some cases. Denver's bulk plain is also lower in some of their suburban zone districts. And I just was thinking, I forgot to go through our comparisons, but they're in your packet, and if anybody wants to discuss them, but comparisons between other jurisdictions. But yes, in Denver neighborhoods like Wellshire, University Hills, south of Yale, they have a lower bulk plain. But in neighborhoods like Washington Park, Observatory Park, they still have that 17-foot bulk plain like we have in the R1c.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Cuesta.
You guys have provided me some information through email, but just so that we can have it out in public, can you run through the process of reversing this? We're having this discussion now. It was supposed to be on a study session with P&Z Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and that got tabled. But how would this look? If council recommended, be it the 15, 12, a lowering of some sort, what would be the next steps?
Want me to answer that?
I can.
Okay.
Any change to Title 16 per the Unified Development Code would require a public hearing to be processed through the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they would be looking to hold that public hearing, and then their recommendation would come forth to City Council in a public hearing format as well. So any changes to Title 16, whichever recommendation it would need to process through that route in public hearing.
Thank you. For planning and zoning, they would just have a single vote on that,
Yes.
and whereas city council would have two.
Yes. You'd
Thank you.
have it. Yeah. You'd have the normal first reading, second reading. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to jump in at all?
I don't have anything right now.
Okay. Oh, Councilmember Sierra, sorry.
I'm using the stick, and apparently it still doesn't work. So a couple questions. So I'm trying to figure out where to start. So let's say we go back down to the 12-foot bulk plain level. Technically, you still would be able to build a duplex within that home. So is it just harder to build a duplex? Would you not have a 40-foot width? Do duplexes get built if they're less than 40 feet?
You could. I don't know that the market is looking for that, but there are certain things you could do that you could do all these things and make it more narrow, and you could fit in a 12-foot bulk plane, but that's not really where the market is. The market is, is what's
Right.
being built currently. But
Okay. So then in terms of privacy, sunlight, those are some of the concerns I've heard around the bulk plane and it going to 17. So is that more a function of the bulk plane, or is that a function of the max height?
it depends, and it can be both. And I think if we move forward here, I'm probably, that discussion about the sun angles at different times of the year, I think we may prepare a drawing showing that a little more clearly. But it really depends. So in this particular drawing, you heard me mention that at the winter solstice, when the sun is at its very lowest, it just happens to be almost the exact same angle as this 6 and 12 roof pitch. Okay, and I'm actually going to show this on the 8-foot ceilings. So in the winter solstice, with this kind of a roof pitch, it wouldn't really matter whether this was a flat roof or this sloped roof, because either way, this point on the roof is what's blocking. These buttons are right next to each other.
I think it's your turn, Mayor.
Pardon?
No, I think I got it.
There you go. That's good.
So this is a critical piece right here in the in the winter, and the sun angle follows this, it wouldn't really matter if this was a flat roof because this would still conceivably block the sunlight. But imagine if you had a height way up here and you had a steeper roof that was a 12 and 12 roof, then all of a sudden you would block more sunlight. So they both work together, but there's certain extremes depending on roof pitch and what your maximum height is.
Okay.
Wow.
So one more question, or did you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say we do go back to the 12-foot bulk plane. Does that impact people that are currently in duplexes that do have the 17-foot? I guess in terms of future work, if they had to do some type of maintenance to their house or some type of improvement, does that 17 to 12 or 17 to 15?
Yes. They would be considered at that point non-conforming structures that would be grandfathered in. They'd be grandfathered in terms of keeping what they have, but any expansions, additions, alterations would have to meet the amended bulk plane. So anything new would have to comply with potentially that lowered bulk plane.
Okay.
What if it burned down?
The entire duplex burned down, it would have to comply
Come
with.
back to 12?
It'd have to
or
go back to
whatever.
12 or 15 or whatever it was.
Right. I think Councilmember Wink might be first, and then Member Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. So you're talking about the solstices. For how much time approximately, I don't expect the exact number, but maybe you have that. You seem to have a lot of information. For how much time, in whatever unit you want to share it, does the sun pitch at, or that 24-degree plane in the winter? Is it days? Is it weeks?
Well, it gradually.
Right, but to what degree does it change so much so that the shading is different than your argument?
So we talked about the two equinoxes, the winter and the summer. Then you've got, the two solstices,
That's okay.
which are typically January 21st and December 21st. Then you've got the two equinoxes, which are in the spring and fall, which are in March and September, usually around the 21st. And those are right in between.
So between December 21st and March 22nd will be at
it
half
changes
that
every day.
Okay, yeah.
It changes every day
So
equally.
until spring. Okay, so that's a good amount of time for shade blockage, basically.
Correct.
It's a month and a half, 2 months plus.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. I had a question about the light as well.
Okay.
So that, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. So, and I saw you had a good diagram. Would you be able to like share that around on a council request or
Absolutely.
something? Because I think that would help give me some more tangibility. And then, is that, those examples are obviously only with roof pitches that are 612, right? Not the other examples?
Correct.
Okay. And then is it possible to get examples of structures that are in the 12 and 15 and 17 range so I could physically go and look at them?
I think we could do that. There were a few built before the bulk plane was increased, and we heard from them, and that was one of the reasons we took a look at that. And obviously we were approving the drawings, so we saw what they were needing to do. But I do think we could find some. I don't know that we have drawings on all of them, but I think we could find a couple of examples.
I would just like to get some real life tangibility and of the structures and see the difference other than drawings. And then on the duplex question, if the bulk plane goes back to 12 feet and it wouldn't work for a duplex, the property owner could build a single family home instead.
Certainly.
Okay. Okay, great. And then last question. I'm trying to understand what impact the 12, 15, or 17 bulk plane would have on drainage onto a property versus an adjacent property.
it really shouldn't have any effect on drainage.
It would be more the height or
It's-
lot coverage
it's-
or,
Drainage is affected by grades, setbacks, and lot coverage.
a lot of other factors, so not
Right,
necessarily
but
the bulk
not
plane.
bulk planar height.
Okay,
Unless you want to argue that a little bit more might freeze in the winter just because it's getting less light on somebody else's property. But no, it really shouldn't have any effect whatsoever.
okay, not directly. Okay, thank you.
Member Barentine, and then Mayor Pro Tem, I'll leave an option for you to jump in if you need to after this one.
From the moment that I got on council in 2015 and these changes have been made in the 2014 and before we got on, we've had nothing but members of the community coming to us having concerns with this, and quite a few members that have moved as a result of it and been discouraged by what they believe it was going to allow. So I really would like some of the issues that they've been bringing forward to be addressed as well, because we have pictures, and I think Councilmember Martinez makes a good point. We're being sent examples of things that they think are egregious, that are causing them problems. And so we need to get that addressed. I would like to at least try to have at least some community input so that we can get what their concern is. Because in this drawings, I don't think it adequately brings the concerns of what they're saying is actually being built out there and causing the problems for them with drainage, with the light, with privacy, with height. I mean, given this, we wouldn't have a 3-story structure being built at all, and we do. So there are obviously other ways they're getting around this to do some, either that or they're breaking the rules. So if they're violating it, then we need to address that. But if they're not, and they're finding a way to go beyond the way that this diagram is, but those aren't the pictures that were being shown and the concerns that were being given fairly pretty recently on what we're getting. So I want to make sure that we have some meeting of the minds here on what's going on, what the citizens are complaining about. And while I realize it's probably not 3,000, it's not 1%, but it's a lot of people, and it's been consistent over the last 4 years, and I really want to hear what those are, and if they're not legitimate, if they really are all within these standards and people don't find ways to get around them, then we need to know that too and have that education. So maybe this council could consider at least having some more interactive input to have a discussion with the issues that are being brought forward, because I don't think this adequately represents them. Or not.
City Manager Lewis has some comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to point out that indeed we have had requests for overturning a number of amendments that were made in 2004, 2005 to Title 16. This is probably, I would say, the one that we hear the most about. And so staff is bringing this one kind of first and foremost in anticipation of probably an overhaul of Title 16 in 2020, 2021 timeframe. And so this was something that council asked us to bring. You're right, it does not solve all the problems, or concerns, I should say.
I guess I'm just looking to get them all addressed so that we're getting them out there, because I don't think this is doing that. 'Cause I think what I was asking was, I've got a 25-foot urban lot. It's 25 feet, it's barely 26 feet. It's a 2-story building. So given your example that if you have more lot to work with, you could go higher, then you shouldn't be able to do that. We have 3-story duplexes going in, so given this, that would not be possible. So I just want to make sure that we're having a conversation that takes in everybody's concerns, because what they're seeing in reality being done and what this says are 2 different things.
Go ahead.
If I could, Mayor. I think you're exactly right, and I believe when I was coming here, staff was recommending more of an overhaul to Title 16 all at once. It would be led by a consultant team. It would take, over a year. I believe the direction we got from council is start taking kind of piece by piece the individual issues and concerns. And so you're exactly right. This in and of itself, by itself, doesn't resolve all the concerns that we hear from residents, but it is kind of a first step and the problem that we hear the most concerns about from the public.
Thank you, Member Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh,
And
sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, I said you could speak next. Can I let her go?
Councilmember Questa can go ahead first. That'll be
Okey-doke.
fine.
Okay.
thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, City Manager Lewis. And I appreciate that approach. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, that we can't start working on this and then concurrently be working on the larger peripheral issues as well, which certainly exist out there. The question that I have that follows up on my first one, so if we were to recommend a lowering of the bulk plane this evening, does it still need to go back to Planning and Zoning for a study session, or do they go straight to a hearing?
It would need to go through a study session, just so they can anticipate any questions for staff to answer during the public hearing and so forth.
Thank you. And I think that the observation on this represents one way to build, but not all of them. And that we're seeing a lot of boxier houses that just go straight up, and I think they almost have flat roofs in some cases, or almost a very little pitch. And I think that that's how you're getting these really tall buildings, they essentially look like, and then you're casting a much longer shadow. And I think that that leads to a second complaint that we're hearing, is that it's out of character. That now you've got something that's going straight up, and it also looks obtuse in some of these neighborhoods. And I think that what we're missing in this picture here is the house next to it that is now being dwarfed in some cases. My thought is that the concern isn't just this house freestanding, it's what this house is replacing. And in many times that was a single-story craftsman, something along those lines that looked accommodating to the other residences in the neighborhood. And that this is going to stand out. Yeah, I hear them called Lego homes, your boxy homes are going to stand out. And that to me is another component of the conversation. But I am glad that this is coming up tonight. We'll see where council stands on it, but I would also agree that we should keep moving forward with that comprehensive look in addition to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I agree with Councilmember Cuesta that we do need to continue looking at this. I think it might be a good idea at some point for City Council to take a field trip around some neighborhoods in particular to see exactly what people are coming to complain about. And I think the bulk plane is addressing part of the issue. I agree there are other issues that need to be addressed, but it's one thing to look at it on paper. It's another thing to go through the neighborhood and see what's going on there. So I would like to do that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Berentine?
I think Councilmember Questa and Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem addressed it. I'm not, please don't misunderstand me. I was just talking about the bulk plane and the issue that exactly what Councilmember Questa brought up was that we're seeing people bring pictures to us that have 3 stories. According to this, it wouldn't be possible unless you're using the attic or you've got a more boxy level going in there, and I don't think they're bringing in the setbacks, or that you could have a 26-foot and have 2-story and still keep within this. So I want to make sure that people have confidence that when we build something that we're making people, that we have people adhering to the rules that we have currently, because they have a feeling we're not, where it comes to the bulk plane. And that I would like a little bit of interaction between us and the community to bring some of those issues or concerns forward. Although Mayor Pro Tem's suggestion of going on a tour and seeing some of these things similar to the pictures that we've been provided, where people are feeling that intrusion into their privacy and light because the bulk plane would get addressed. So I think both of those would at least be a start for it. But I would also like to see some inclusion of the community so that their impression of it, their interpretation of it, because they're coming to us believing that we're not even adhering to what we currently have. So, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Most of it was answered by them.
Would either of you want to address anything that's been said so far in terms of information?
I guess it doesn't sound necessarily like there's any firm input on, specifically on one of these options right now. It sounds a little bit like you'd like to see some more, get some more information, see some more out in the community.
If I may, I'm hearing several themes going on. I first want to mention that, we talked about topography a little bit. Brooke did an outstanding job on these drawings. They're not stock drawings, they're real drawings to Englewood. But when you figure topography, there's a lot of factors at play. So, while this is showing the very flat lot, you could have a lot of differential between bulk plane height when you start figuring the topography. Secondly, I just want to clarify, we do have a Planning and Zoning Commission study session on November 5th, but I'm also hearing the desire to have a field trip as well as some additional community input. So if it's council's pleasure, we can look into scheduling such an input session for this topic. So I just kind of trying to wrap several things.
I think that's a good capturing of it.
Okay.
I see yours and I see yours, so hang on just a second. I'm going to come to both you, Councilmember Sierra and Cuesta. I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, field trips I think are a great idea. I've taken 2 in the last month. I have 2 more this Friday going on with residents that have been emailing and talking about things. And I think what's been enlightening to me tonight is realizing that some of what we think is causing the shading is actually the nature of buildings and our sun in general. And I almost heard height of fence at some point, like even 6-foot fence. I live in a neighborhood that's had a HOA, that's a recurring thing, and you couldn't have anything more than 5 foot, and it really drove people nuts, but everybody has 6 feet, so everybody's broken it already. But I know that once people put those up that have gardens on the other side, right away, it's gone. The garden can't function. But is that correct in that I'm understanding you saying it almost doesn't matter what the bulk plane is, that we have major issues around light, especially when you go to the second level?
We do. As I mentioned, the bulk plane in the summer, in the summer solstice, is even a 17-foot bulk plane is about equivalent of a 6-foot fence in terms of shading. In the winter, it goes the other extreme, so that even a low bulk plane, you're still my 6-foot fence that's on my south property line, even if it's not shaded by a house or a garage or anything, it shadows about a 12-foot wide area on the ground in the middle of winter. Mm-hmm. So yes,
that's helpful. I think
has a lot to do with time of year.
Yeah. The other thing about the field trip thing, it might be really helpful if we're thinking about specific places and homes, if we could send addresses. I know that's a little odd, but people are volunteering their own addresses. Maybe we can put a compilation of those together to get a good cross mix of what we're looking at. I went to one a couple weeks ago where there was almost a 5-foot difference in grade from one house to the next. And so that made me then ask the question, I know about this much to make me dangerous, but is there something called form zoning?
Form-based code?
Yes, form-based code that's arising in some cities around this, and would that help? And if that's going to sidetrack us tonight, don't go down that road.
That would sidetrack us.
Okay, then
That's a whole
forget
topic.
it. I'll talk with you offline about it.
Okay.
Because I know some cities, Denver's experimenting with it, right?
Correct.
Let's see. Yes, I think those are the 2 things then. And Councilmember Cuesta first, and then Councilmember Sierra.
Sure, thank you. I think that the first part might have been answered in that when I think of field trip, I think of probably the traditional school sense that we would all go together. Difficult to coordinate the group, but you guys can just send addresses and then we can all go out and take a look at the examples that are presented. Is that what's being proposed?
I actually think it'd be helpful to have an expert along explaining different things to us. So if we, I mean, we've done it before in councils past. It hasn't been done for probably 3 to 4 years, maybe 5, but we have done it. And we've taken a Monday. I think it's a little hard to do in the winter. Probably, maybe we need to take a Saturday morning and say, hey, let's go get a real feel for it.
Okay. And then the other one is staff has put together options for possible amendments for bulk plane regulations. And maybe there's folks seeking more information. I'm ready to at least move forward this evening. And so are we going to go around and just state where everybody stands on
Yeah,
it?
you're saying move forward on what?
We've been given 2 different potential amendments here.
Okay.
And are we still going to go around
Yes,
the
we
room
sure
and see
can.
where people stand?
We sure
Thank you.
can. Mayor Pro Tem?
Did you address me?
Yes, just wondering if you have any other questions, and I'm going to go to Member Sierra.
I don't have any more questions right now.
Okay, Member Sierra.
I waited to ask this question just because it's not really on the topic, but I know Member Martinez has asked this question previously, but it's more of a zoning question. Would we be able to do something similar if we keep the bulk plane at 17? Would we be able to do some type of zoning or an overlay over specific neighborhoods or blocks that have experienced many duplexes? Will we be able to do something like that, or does that complicate zoning across parts of the city?
Well, a couple of things on that, and I think what you're talking about is doing an overlay district maybe similar to what was done with the Neighborhood Preservation Overlay District in the MUR3B, which didn't deal with bulk plane, it had other stipulations on it. But in terms of, you're saying do an overlay in an R1c or maybe not all the R1c or maybe not all the R2 or
Well,
R3?
I'm just saying, like, for example, 2900 South Sherman, because
Okay.
they have experienced many duplexes on that block. You know, at a certain point, well, we have heard that there's just too many as it is. So will we be able to say no more duplexes? We'll have an overlay that only allows 7 duplexes or whatever the number is within 2900 South Sherman, but then there may be a different overlay within another part of that same R2 district that may say, you know, either same amount of duplexes or whatever happens to be the case. Can we go down to that level, or does that?
I think as a general kind of zoning, I think we want to be careful with spot zoning. We want to make sure that, you know, regulations are clear and equitable across relatively similar. It's not to say that you can't do it, but you can get into some equity situations where somebody right across the street, where we're changing zoning, and because they live on the other side of whatever east-west cross street, they've been now downzoned. It's downzoning is kind of a tricky business, and so I think it could have some unintended consequences, potentially.
City Manager Lewis?
I do want to just point out that if any council members or residents have a property, new construction, anytime since 2004 that they think does not comply, I would like those addresses so we can verify that.
That's great. I think that's really needed. All right, so I think you're wanting to get direction on these 2 alternatives that you suggested to us.
If you'd like to provide that direction, I think we're, sure.
But in the long run, zoning's going to take it up too, right? So let's go ahead. Member Queston, if you want to start out, you sure can.
You bet. This evening I am supporting R1c zone being reduced from a 17 feet bulk plane to a 12 feet bulk plane. It states that lowering the current bulk plane from 17 to 12 feet would have an incrementally greater impact on construction of 2-story homes in the R1c zone district. And I think that I'm in favor of that. You guys keep mentioning the market, and I'm not sure that it's our job to govern to the market, because if so, why have a bulk plan at all? Just remove everything and let the market decide. So that we have determined that we should govern to a certain extent, put those limits at certain increments. It was decided 2014, it was decided 2014, 2015, excuse me, is raised to 20 or 17 feet. My understanding in response to an economic slowdown, I think we're a little bit behind the curve because the market had picked up by then. And I think that we're correcting something that should not have been changed in the first place. So I would support R1c being reduced to 12, and the same would go for R2 and R3. Thank you.
I am, based on the information I have at this moment, I only might support reducing the bulk plane in R1c. Not in the others.
And to 12 or to 15?
Preferably to 15, and based on your drawings, that seems a benefit.
Member Martinez, what are your thoughts on it? Again, this isn't voting, but
Sure. Yeah, and based on, I would like to see some more real-life examples, but based on what I know today, I would be comfortable reducing the bulk plane in R1c to 12 feet, and also 12 feet in R2 and R3 zone districts.
Councilmember Sierra.
I need more information on this. I need to go back and talk to some constituents that are within some of these new duplexes that we may potentially be making their properties non-conforming. So I think that that is something that, at this point, obviously, if planning and zoning should talk about the subject, but it is something that I do need to let some constituents know about.
Mayor Barentine.
I too would like to see the R1c and the R districts go back to 12. However, I would like a little bit more information and a little, as Councilmember Martinez brought up, a little bit more realistic viewpoint of this, because we've gotten so many pictures that are so much obviously bigger than what this is showing us, that I either want to know whether they're finding a way to get around that, and if they are, then there are other ways to build an R1c that would allow a two-story home, maybe with some other concessions, or they're violating what we currently have. So I do want a little bit more information, but generally for just returning it back to the 12-foot.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I too would support reducing in the R1c and the other R districts from 17 feet to 12 feet.
All right. It doesn't matter what I weigh in, but I would like a lot more community input. And I don't mind going down to 15. I think that might be a smarter way to go, maybe in all three. But I'm glad we have a process with zoning, planning and zoning to go through this, but I would encourage them to do a little bit more than just hold a public hearing, although I know that slows it down, so I could be overridden on that. But I would like more input. And I'd like to see us schedule something fairly quickly to do a council tour, and if we have to split it into two, then that would be fine. But I do think it would be helpful to have some of you along to explain some of the things that happen. And for those that are listening, that you might have a home that you'd like us to look at in areas, that'd be great too. I think we should start with what we already know and some of the ones that have been really problematic for people. I think it might also be good to look at some R1A, R1B things of what has been done in those that, because I've heard that there's no building going on in those areas, but there are scrapes going on, very large homes being put in, and people say, well, we've picked winners and losers, and I think the nature of the land is it allows for things to be done without worrying about going beyond a 12-foot. So it might be good to take a look at a couple of those, and I can give some addresses on that. Does that help you both?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything further, City Manager? No? All right. Great. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, Council, we now are on to Council Member's Choice. Who would like to start? Yeah, all right. Okay, Member Martinez, no report. Member Wink?
No report.
Member Cuesta?
No report this evening, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No report.
Member Barentine? Member Sierra?
I just want to congratulate Anthony Marshall from Leatherneck Machine for hosting us at Manufacturers Day and just Manufacturers Edge. It was a great event, great turnout, even in cold weather. Not as cold as today, but just a great event. So just really cool business. Started 2 years ago. Got a customer last year during Manufacturers event, and so now he was hosting it. So just just a great event overall for Inglewood.
Yeah, that's a great, great story. So thank you for being there. I know that nobody else was able to come, so I appreciate your being there. I also wanted to, my thing is we have these shirts, and not all of us have them, but this is the gas recovery facility shirts. If you still want one on council, you can get one. But on Thursday is our ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. And it looks like it's still going to happen, even though there might be a little snow, but we're hoping it'll be nice and sunny that day. So that's my only thing tonight. City Manager?
Mayor, just one item, and that is at your desks or in your packet, you should have received a benefits package for 2020. So just if you have any questions about that, feel free to forward those on to myself or Dorothy. We also wanted to let you know if you wanted to get a little more in-depth information in person, there is going to be kind of a benefits fair that's going to be at the rec center tomorrow morning, starting at 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. So feel free to attend that if you'd like.
Quick question about that. Is that sort of a revolving people coming through, or is it you need to sit that whole time? Okay, great.
It's a
It's
kind of come and go
Okay,
event.
great. City Attorney?
Yes, at the last regular meeting, there was a vote to send short-term rentals ordinance back to P&Z to review certain issues. And you had left the dates to bring that back open, dependent on the scheduling of P&Z. And I was asked to bring back what those tentative dates look like so that you would have a general idea of when to expect that back in front of City Council. And it looks like they will be able to have a public hearing on this matter on December 3rd, which brings it back to City Council right at the beginning of January.
Thank you. I missed one thing, I believe, and that is, Member Wink, do you want to talk about the NLC conference in November? We just need to get a consensus to go ahead and bring it forward for for the regular meeting.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be good for us to make a decision on that in the regular meeting coming up. I'm definitely interested in attending on behalf of us, or along with anybody else who's planning on attending.
This is a little different NLC. It's the City Summit, I believe. Is that what it's called?
It's the summit.
It's the Summit, which I have heard is quite different. It's in November rather than March where it's in DC, and this one in San Antonio. Last year, I heard from several mayors that it was an incredibly helpful conference. For some people, better than the DC, and so we need to approve whether she can go or not. Are you okay with us putting that on the agenda for next week? If anybody thinks, no way, a waste our time, we do need to vote to decide whether or not she can expend funds to do it. Any naysayers, don't want to even see anybody look at that? Okay, we'll bring it forward then. Just a heads up for it, though. The timing is just a little awkward. Sorry about that. All right, I think we're adjourned. Have a good week.